Christopher. I'm Beth Bosk from New Settler Interview, and I'm going to start our time together with a letter that was written by Sean Gunn's mother, who recognizes you as her grandson. I'm going to read the first paragraph, and then you can pick up the story from there. Sir, I'm writing from Germany, where I serve as a Department of the Army civilian with the U.S. Army. I'm writing because of concern for my grandson, who's a California resident. Christopher Diaz has a well-documented history of asthma and multiple food and environmental allergies. Several years ago, after a hospital stay in intensive care, following the collapse of a lung due to use of medically prescribed asthma inhalers, he was advised to move to California to consider alternative treatments and to maintain an organic lifestyle to avoid allergens contributing to his health difficulties. Last year in August, he returned to Texas for the funeral of a family member. And while driving through Brownwood, he was admittedly profiled by the local police and stopped. The claim was he was driving an unregistered vehicle, which wasn't true, because he declined courteously and respectfully, according to the trooper, to provide his identification. He was arrested. Of course, the police found his medication with both his prescription and his religious belief documentation wrapped around the bottle. What was the documentation around the bottle?
It's a sacrament religious tag from the Hawaii Cannabis Ministry. I don't know if you know much about
No, I don't.
The Hawaii Cannabis Ministry. Both of my parents and several other of my family members are part of this, ministry, and I follow along the same beliefs, although I'm not a minister myself, but I do follow the same beliefs. And
what would you say those core beliefs were?
That God put the cannabis plant here on earth for every human being, for everybody. It's a God-given plant. I believe that's what the interpretation of Genesis 1:11 is. God put every fruit-bearing seed and herb-bearing seed, here on this planet.
Why had you wrapped it around your medication? What led you to do that?
Because the medication is a sacrament, it was put here, on this earth from God, and although I am a medical patient, I believe that God put the plant here for, humans as well.
When your car was stopped, what was was any reason given to you by the officer as to why they had stopped your car?
No. Later on, I was told that it was for expired registration, which the tags on the car were not expired. It's a California car and California plates and tags.
Where did the notion come from that's been offered that you were stopped, that you were profiled? You were stopped because you were driving with California plates through the state of Texas.
The state trooper openly admitted it at a pre-trial hearing in court on the stand.
When did you first come to California and why?
In 2007, I think, was my first time to come to California. The main reason being that, cannabis is recognized as a medicine here, and I can medicate within the California legal guidelines, legally, and other reasons being, I feel like it's a better place than Texas to have a family,
Late at night when you were stopped by the officer, why didn't you give him your name or a name when he requested it? That's the question out there that I think follows you.
Mainly on my personal beliefs.
What are your personal beliefs regarding naming?
A name is not who we are. It's, it's basically a fiction. We can't be the name that we were given. To me, the connection between the two human beings is what matters. And, I don't have a state-issued identification. And so I couldn't provide him with the state-issued identification.
Did he indicate to you that simply providing your name would have been enough if you don't have a driver's license or so?
There was no indication of anything.
Was it that you were frightened? Did you freeze up, or was it a determination on your part not to provide him with the name your birth name?
Both. I mean, I did. It has been my first time ever pulled over, and being late at night and in the middle of nowhere by myself, it is frightening. That's the reason why I asked and stated that I was going to get my camera and get documentation of what was going on, and that's when I was pulled out of the car and thrown in handcuffs, and just went from there.
One of the stories circulating about you is that the sovereignty movement, folks from the sovereignty movement, came to the fore in your support over the issue of your not providing your name. And so I was hoping you could just talk a little bit about how you felt about that support, what you share in common, and where your own mind diverges from it.
I haven't had much interaction with sovereign people or people of the sovereign movement. The help that was seeked out during the time of my confinement in Texas, I don't know who they were and where they came from. I do know that the help that was provided by them didn't really help my situation. It seems like it's gotten a lot worse. It seems like there's a lot of false stories, and the judge and the officials in Brown County really didn't seem to like the help that was sought out, and they're helping.
I'm going to continue reading from this letter from your grandmother.
Okay.
He subsequently spent 80 days in the Brownwood jail. He had no independent lawyer, and the lawyer provided by the court apparently had a heart attack and died. While in Brownwood jail, he was refused visits by pastors, and the organic fruit which was brought to him because of his multiple food allergies were refused. The car belonging to his parents was impounded, even though the parents brought the registration documentation the next day, and it remains there to this date, although the tow trucker offered to give it back for $1,500 with no receipt, and that was reported to your office as well. This is a letter to the Attorney General of the state of Texas, I understand.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about being in jail, always wondering and worrying about when your next asthmatic attack would come, what that was like, and how you dealt with those fears?
I wasn't provided with any kind of asthma medication until maybe about the last 2 weeks that I was there. So, going 60 days without, any kind of medication or any kind of medical attention at all, not knowing what's going on, the harsh conditions. I mean, it's small confinement rooms, non-organic food.
Were you harassed or attacked by either the other inmates there or staff?
Verbally, a few times by inmates and as well as staff, yes.
Verbally because of your belief system, or because you're a frail-looking young man?
I don't know what their reasons were for harassing me. It's not for me to say what.
When you're bailed out, finally, I think another grandmother put up bail money.
Right.
You determined not to stay in Texas. Could you explain what they were charging you with and why you made the determination to leave the state?
One of the charges is a possession of marijuana, which here wouldn't be a very big deal, as well as the possession of a controlled substance, which is hash or hashish. Here wouldn't be a big deal either.
Here it's called a cannabis concentrate, but because it's known as hash and has been
considered a controlled
Yeah.
substance.
So what do you use the cannabis concentrate for with regard to your medical ailments?
As an expectorant.
How do you use it?
How do I use it? I smoke it.
And then it helps you spit out?
Yes, it helps. Whenever I can't get the deep breath, it also helps me to get a deep enough breath because, I have to cough, and it coughs up the congestion in my lungs, and it gets that deep enough breath, because, it's an expectorant. It's much stronger than, just the cannabis itself,
And by smoking it, that's the quickest delivery system
Yes.
The body has, rather than through other ways of ingesting
Right.
the cannabinoids. So let's go back to the decision. You've been bailed out, and you determine not to remain in the state of Texas. How did you come to that?
I couldn't find anybody that was willing to help in Texas. The
While you were
public defender had passed away. I had spoken to several attorneys that didn't really seem like they could do anything and that were willing to help on my behalf.
And do you leave Texas the day that you're released from the Texas jail?
No. I actually stayed in Texas for maybe a little over a month and a half. Speaking to different attorneys, seeking out help in Texas with no luck, and then decided to come back to California where I do live and seek help in California.
Did you make contact with any of the officials in Texas from California?
I tried repeatedly, but I did not get contact or response.
When you made those attempts, how did you identify yourself?
As the man that they know of, Christopher Diaz.
One of the reasons you're here is because you have two very young children and you were raising them by yourself with the help of your mom and her partner. You're a very young father, so let's talk a little bit about having your first child at such an early age, at age 16, that part of your journey. Your dad.
Well, obviously I didn't have the children myself, but yes, I did bring two children into this world. They're beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to have two children and one children, to have any children.
Talk to me about raising them as a kid yourself, though.
It makes me want to be a kid again, It's difficult, but I don't know. I wouldn't really think too much about, other people's and, how they do with their children or their lives or how old or young they are when they have their children. I try to live my life and deal with what comes at me, day to day. And, having two children was, it's a handful. It's two handfuls.
Why don't I continue with this letter
Okay.
from your grandmother?
Okay.
He was finally released and court dates kept changing. He returned to California because it was there he had employment and needed to be able to support his two small children. And this in parenthesis, I acknowledge that was a bad idea, but I doubt Texas is going to provide support for these two children, and the mother left the children with him, returning to Texas. Subsequently, in this last month, he was tracked down and is sitting in a California jail awaiting extradition to Texas. I'm writing to ask that you consider waiving the extradition request and to reduce the charges to a misdemeanor. As a Texas resident, I thoroughly understand that possession of marijuana is illegal in Texas. The amounts he had was worthy of a misdemeanor, not the threatened 5 to 99 years. Do you want to talk about what you face?
Not really.
5 to 99 years.
Not really. I mean, it's shocking.